Chapter 1. Before the Storm. You don't remember the exact moment the rain begins. Sometimes you only notice you're wet when you step under the streetlight and see the water running down your coat. That's how it was with Christina and me. I never saw the first cracks in our marriage, only the slow flood that followed. I remember a winter 3 years ago, before everything changed. Christina and I were decorating the house for Christmas, laughing over old ornaments and cheap wine. She was always better at finding beauty in small things: a string of lights, the first snow, a chipped mug. I watched her that night, the way she hummed under her breath, the way her eyes lit up when she found the silly reindeer ornament I hated. She kissed me with cold lips and told me she couldn't imagine her life without me. I believed her. We used to dream together about moving to the coast, about raising kids, about opening a little coffee shop where she'd bake and I'd read the paper in the back. She liked to tease me, said I was too serious, too neat. I used to laugh at myself through her eyes, until I forgot how. Our friends called us the perfect couple. We hosted dinners every other Friday. Too much wine, homemade food, board games that always ended in mock arguments. Max, our mutt with a crooked tail, would sneak scraps under the table. Christina's laughter filled every room. But those days faded, quietly at first. I missed them before I even knew they were gone. Chapter 2. The First Lie. At first, I blamed myself. Christina started staying late at work. I told myself it was the busy season, that her boss was a tyrant, that she'd come home as soon as she could. She'd climb into bed after midnight, hair smelling of someone else's cigarettes, body tense and cold. I'd reach for her, half asleep, and she'd pull away gently, whispering, "Not tonight, I'm exhausted." I searched for reasons, not evidence. I remembered all the times I'd disappointed her, the promotion I didn't get, the trips I canceled, the fights over money. Maybe I had changed, grown distant. Maybe she needed more than I could give. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. It followed me into the shower, into the office, into the silent hours before dawn. Suspicion is like an itch beneath the skin. The more you try to ignore it, the worse it gets. One Friday, she called to say she'd be home late. I waited up, pretending to watch TV, but really listening for the sound of her keys in the door. When she finally arrived, after 2 a.m, she flinched at the sight of me. She mumbled something about a project, her eyes darting to the clock. She didn't notice that her lipstick was smudged, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. That was the night I checked our bank statements for the first time. And that was the night the old version of me, trusting, hopeful, blindly in love, finally died.
Chapter 3. Whispers in the Dark. I wasn't built for secrets. For weeks, I told myself I was being paranoid. I clung to routine, making coffee before sunrise, feeding Max, reading the same headlines twice. Christina moved around me like a shadow, careful, distracted, polite in a way she'd never been before. She started working weekends. Her phone never left her side. Sometimes she'd glance at it, eyes flickering with a smile meant for someone else. I'd tried to brush it off. I forced myself to remember who we used to be. Late-night drives to nowhere, dancing barefoot in the kitchen. The way she once pressed notes into my coat pockets. "Come home early. I miss you." But those memories started to feel less like anchors and more like weights. One Saturday, when she said she had a team-building brunch, I waited 10 minutes after she left, then followed her car. My hands shook on the steering wheel, guilt and adrenaline mixing into something sickly sweet. I felt like a criminal, like a stranger. I kept my distance, trailing her through sleepy suburban streets. She took a turn toward the city, and I hesitated. Maybe she'd really meet her colleagues. Maybe she'd spot me in the rear view, laugh at my stupidity. But then she parked outside a cafe I'd never seen before. I watched as a man approached her, tall and confident, pulling her into a tight embrace. They sat together, too close for strangers. They talked, heads bowed, hands brushing. I couldn't hear what they said, didn't want to. I just watched, frozen, every muscle locked in place. When she finally left, alone, I waited until she'd turned the corner. Then I let myself breathe. I spent the drive home rehearsing explanations. Maybe he was an old friend. Maybe she needed comfort, someone to talk to about us. But the truth was already blooming in my chest, black and cold. That night, when she came home, I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I asked how her brunch was. She smiled, told me stories about her coworkers, stories she must have rehearsed, word for word, never meeting my eyes. I lay awake long after she fell asleep, listening to her soft, even breaths. I wondered if she dreamed of him. I wondered if I ever truly knew the woman sleeping next to me. Chapter 4. Echoes of What Was. Some nights, when Christina was late, I would sit alone in the darkened kitchen and replay the beginning of our story. It had started with such simplicity: a university party, cheap beer, music too loud to hear your own thoughts. Christina had been the bright spot in the room, laughing, teasing, always surrounded by friends. She'd caught me staring, grinned, and dragged me onto the makeshift dance floor. Later, outside in the chilly spring air, she'd pressed her palm to mine, tracing invisible lines as if she already knew how our futures would intertwine. I used to think no one knew me better than she did. I remember lazy Sundays in our first apartment, her head on my chest, the light from the window turning her hair gold. I remember long drives, hands clasped on the gear shift, promises murmured against my shoulder at 2 a.m. I remember how we used to fight, loud, passionate, always ending in laughter, making up before we could even remember what started it. Now our fights were different. Smaller, quieter. They started with a look, a sigh, a question left unanswered. Tonight, I watched her chop vegetables for dinner, her movements quick, sharp, almost defensive. Max lay at her feet, watching us with anxious eyes. I tried to bridge the distance. "You've been tired lately," I said, keeping my voice light. "Is everything okay at work?" She paused just for a second before answering. "Just busy, deadlines, you know how it is." I nodded, studying her profile. She didn't meet my gaze. We ate in silence, forks scraping plates, the sound too loud in the small kitchen. I wanted to reach for her, to say something, anything that would bring us back, but pride kept my mouth shut. I wondered if she was thinking about him, if she was mentally somewhere else. Later, as she washed dishes, I stood behind her, searching for the right words. "Do you remember our first apartment?" I asked. She laughed, but it was hollow. That shoebox? I try not to remember. We were happy there. She shrugged. We were younger. She didn't say more. Neither did I. That night, lying in bed side by side, I listened to the rain tapping at the window. Christina's breathing was even, steady, as if she'd already drifted off to another world. I wondered when exactly she had stopped choosing me. I wondered if there was still time to stop her from leaving, or if I wanted to at all.
Chapter 5. Foundations of Revenge. I started hiding things. At first, it was just small acts of self-preservation. I changed the password on my personal email, checked our shared bank accounts daily, made sure Christina's name was off my credit card statements. Each morning before work, I'd take Max for a longer walk than usual, phone pressed to my ear, pretending to talk to clients while I listened for traces of guilt in my own voice. I opened a separate savings account under my mother's maiden name, transferred small sums at a time, nothing suspicious, nothing that would trip the bank's algorithms or catch Christina's attention. I told myself it was a precaution, just in case, but I already knew what I was preparing for. One afternoon, I left work early and drove across the city to a law office in a dull glass building. My hands sweated on the steering wheel. The lawyer was brisk, professional, barely glancing up from her laptop as I laid out the basics. Marriage, joint property, recent strain. I didn't mention infidelity. Not yet. I asked about worst-case scenarios, about division of assets, about what it would mean for someone to start over as little as possible. She gave me a stack of pamphlets and a business card. Her smile was thin, practiced. She said, "Call me when you're ready." That night, as I let myself into the dark, empty house, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Dinner with Masha, don't wait up." Masha, our old friend from college, now living across town, the one who never quite left our orbit. Christina hadn't seen her in months. On a whim, I texted Masha, "Hope dinner's fun tonight. Tell Christina not to stay out too late." The reply came back almost instantly. "Dinner? I'm home with the kids. Haven't seen Chris in ages. You two okay?" My fingers tightened on the phone. The kitchen clock ticked in the silence. Later, when Christina came home, breathless, apologetic, saying traffic was awful, I didn't confront her. I asked how Masha was. Christina's eyes flickered just for a moment, and she said, "She's good. We talked for hours." I nodded, my smile tight. Two could play at this game. That night, I began keeping a journal, a detailed, unvarnished record of every lie, every strange behavior, every financial move. I wrote for hours, the words coming faster than I could control. For the first time, my anger felt clean. For the first time, I felt in control. Chapter 6. Crossed Lines. My life was now divided into two realities, the one I showed Christina and the one I kept for myself. I set up a small camera in my car, just in case I needed to record where I was, what I was doing. I scanned her phone bills, tracked her location through a shared app she had forgotten about. Each day I became more obsessed, not just with catching her, but with documenting everything. The more I learned, the less I recognized my own reflection. Christina changed too. Her cheerfulness became forced, her affection uncertain. She started asking more questions about my work, my schedule, the money I spent. One evening as I came home later than usual, she met me at the door, arms folded. "Where were you?" she asked. "You said you'd be home by 7." I shrugged, kicking off my shoes. I stopped for a drink with Daniel from the office, lost track of time. She studied my face, searching for cracks. You've been distant lately, secretive. I bit back a retort. How easy it would be to turn the accusation around, to ask where she had been, whose number she'd been texting, whose cologne clung faintly to her scarf. Instead, I smiled. We're just both busy, I guess. She didn't look convinced. That night, as we lay in the darkness, neither of us sleeping, I felt the chasm between us yawning wider. There was a time when we would have talked, argued, fought our way back to each other. Now we only circled, watching, waiting for the other to make a mistake. The next morning, I left early, pretending to go to work. Instead, I parked down the street and waited. At 9 sharp, a man, the same man from the cafe, pulled up in a silver sedan. Christina appeared minutes later, glancing over her shoulder before slipping into the passenger seat. I took photos, heart pounding, hands clammy. But as I watched them drive away, I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion, a kind of grief for everything we'd become. That afternoon, Christina called me at work. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. "Can we talk tonight? Really talk?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the vulnerability I heard there. "Of course," I said. But part of me already knew. There was nothing left to save. We were too far gone.
Chapter 7. Shadows and Settlements. That night, Christina waited for me in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. She looked smaller than I remembered, almost fragile. But her eyes were hard, unblinking. "We need to talk," she said. I sat across from her, waiting. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of the old clock on the wall. She tried first. "I know things haven't been right. I feel like we're drifting. You're not here even when you are. You don't trust me anymore." I watched her carefully. Was this confession? Manipulation? She took a shaky breath. "If there's someone else, just tell me." The words hung in the air. I almost laughed. The irony cut sharper than anything I could have planned. "There's no one else," I said quietly. She studied me for a long moment. "Do you still love me?" The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Did I? Could I? I remembered the way she used to smile at me across crowded rooms, the mornings when we'd wake, tangled together, the softness of her hand in mine. But those memories felt distant now, washed out by suspicion and silence. "I don't know," I answered at last. A tear slipped down her cheek. She looked away, blinking quickly, and I felt a pang of guilt. For a moment, I wondered what would have happened if we'd both tried harder sooner. But that moment passed. That night, I slept on the couch. Max curled at my feet, sensing the change in the air. The next day, I started closing the financial doors for good. I visited the bank, made the final transfers, locked her out from our joint account with a series of phone calls and passwords she would never guess. I updated the paperwork on the house, made sure her name would never again appear next to mine. I met with the lawyer, signed the documents, felt the last threads of our shared life snap, one by one. At home, Christina moved through the rooms like a ghost, her eyes rimmed red,
her words short and careful. The kitchen felt too big. The bed felt empty, even with both of us in it. Sometimes, late at night, I heard her crying in the bathroom, trying to muffle the sound. I told myself not to care. But it's never that simple. Even as I steeled myself for the final act, I felt the old ache, the hollow, hopeless longing for what we'd lost. And still, I pressed on.
I waited for the right moment. A week after our talk, Christina's routines became erratic. She stayed out late, left her phone face down on the table, jumped at sudden noises. She hardly spoke to me except to ask if I'd seen her keys or when the bills would be paid. She must have realized her access to our money was gone. I saw her staring at her laptop, frustration tightening her jaw, fingers drumming on the desk. I moved through the house like a caretaker in an abandoned museum, collecting the last evidence I needed. Photos, messages, credit card slips from restaurants I'd never visited. I printed everything, tucked it neatly into an envelope, and sealed it shut with my initials. There was a strange sense of calm in the ritual, as if I was packing up a life I no longer recognized. The final meeting with my lawyer was brief. She scanned the documents, nodded, and assured me everything would move quickly now. "You did the right thing," she said, but her voice sounded hollow. That evening I waited for Christina to come home. When she stepped through the door, hair damp from rain, shoulders slumped under her coat, I handed her the envelope. She stared at it for a long moment. "What's this?" "My answer," I said. She opened it slowly, flipping through the pages. At first she tried to keep her face blank, but I saw the color drain from her cheeks, saw her hands begin to shake. She looked up, her eyes wide and wild. "How long?" "Long enough," I answered. For a second I thought she might collapse. Instead, she squared her shoulders, the old defiance flashing in her gaze. "So what happens now?" I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Now it's over. The house, the accounts, they're mine. The rest the lawyer will handle." Her lip trembled. You planned all this?" I nodded. "After you stopped loving me. After you stopped coming home." Tears slid down her face, silent and hot. I thought of all the years we'd spent together, the laughter, the trust, the hope. For a moment I almost wanted to take it all back, to tell her we could start again, but I knew better. She gathered her things in silence. No yelling, no begging. She paused at the door, Max pressed against her shins, whining low. She knelt, hugged him tight, then stood and met my eyes one last time. "I'm sorry," she said, and this time I almost believed her. Then she was gone. The house was silent, but not peaceful. I wandered through the empty rooms, pausing in doorways, listening for sounds that would never come again. I opened the windows to let the rain smell in, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for relief that never arrived. I'd won, but the victory tasted like ashes. Months passed, and the world outside went on unchanged. Spring came, then summer, and I found myself alone in the house that once felt too small for all the laughter inside it. Now the walls echoed only with silence and the soft pad of Max's paws as he searched for a second pair of footsteps that never returned. I kept busy, threw myself into work, fixed the things I'd always put off, tried to reclaim some old version of myself.
Friends reached out at first, offering sympathy or silent judgment. Some called what I did justice, others called it cruelty. In quiet moments, I called it both. Christina never tried to come back. I heard through friends that she'd moved in with her sister, that she started over in a new city. The man she'd chosen instead of me faded from the picture, just a name in my old journals, nothing more. Sometimes, on rainy evenings, I'd sit by the window and remember the way she used to laugh, the genuine, reckless sound that had once made me believe anything was possible. I wondered if she ever thought of me. I wondered, too, if I'd ever truly forgive her, or myself. I had my revenge. I had everything I thought I wanted. But as the months turned to years, I realized that some things can't be reclaimed or rebuilt. Love, trust, the quiet certainty of a shared future. Once lost, they never quite return in the same shape. Life moves on, whether we want it to or not. In the end, all that remained was a single, unanswerable question. If you were in my place, what would you have done?